Those Days with the Monsters, Part 38. With a tired groan, Kirrel made his way down to the dining area. His frills pulsed orange with irritation at the sound of his footsteps. The claw caps ticked unnaturally against the floor, and he didn't have the energy or patience to handle it. At the moment, he thought he wouldn't mind if he never saw Alex for the rest of his life. Somehow Kirrel found himself in a chair with a steamed tuber and some flaky aquatic meat in front of him. He didn't feel hungry. No, wait, where was the food? He could have sworn there was some in front of him not long ago. He glanced around, slightly concerned.
Why are you all looking at me?
So many khuman eyes were on him. They looked amused. It was embarrassing. I guess you were hungry, huh, Squishy? Kirrel glanced over to see Doc sliding another dish towards him, this one with a pile of small flat leaves on it. They were very dark green. Kirrel hadn't seen them before. I think these are clear for you, but don't eat them as fast as the fish. It took a second for Kirrel to understand the statement. That explained the slightly oily feeling on his tongue. It must be left behind by the fish. The fact that he'd eaten fish, and more importantly a potato, without even remembering it, was concerning. Kirrel found himself especially worried that he might not have taken time to appropriately enjoy the potato, given that he couldn't quite remember. Cautiously, he picked up one of the leaves, turning it over and examining it. It was green, round, and had a thick, juicy vein on it. It almost looked like some of the leaves he used to eat on Richthan, though at this point Kirrel knew better than to assume that anything else about a Deathworld plant was the same. Then, with some hesitation, Kirrel put the little leaf in his mouth and bit down. It was juicier than it looked, and it tasted slightly sweet. He wasn't sure if it was meant to or not.
Is this supposed to be sweet?
He asked quietly, not sure if he was having some terrible reaction to the plant. Spinach? Sweet? Happy glanced at Doc, who was furiously flipping through something on his holopad. Doc's face seemed calm, but Kirrel got the feeling that Doc was anything but relaxed. Something about his slightly raised shoulders, maybe? Kirrel wasn't good at this sort of thing. Ah, it looks like... From what I can tell, I think you break down cellulose in your mouth. Cellulose is made from glucose, leading to a sweeter taste. Gets drowned by the starch with the potato, but I think you'll be fine. Doc took a deep breath and let it out slowly, wiping his forehead with one sleeve. Still, I'd like you to wait a bit before eating another bite, just to monitor for a reaction, and also to give my heart time to settle. Kirrel paused, trying to look away from the remarkably tasty leaves that he wanted more of.
Your heart needs to settle?
Well, I got nervous for a minute, so my heart rate went up. Adrenaline, you know? Kirrel blinked. No, he didn't know.
What's adrenaline?
It's a chemical we make. It tells our hearts to beat faster, our lungs to breathe better, and our muscles to prepare for serious work. We call it fight or flight.
But khumans can't fly.
Kirrel's frills pulsed bright purple as the crew collectively made the khuman amusement noise. Wait, could they fly? That didn't make sense. They had such high gravity.
Can they?
The amusement noises got louder. Someone pulled out a chair next to Kirrel and flopped into it with a soft grunt. Kirrel didn't look. He was too embarrassed to meet a khuman's eyes. Nah, we don't fly. It's a figure of speech. That was Smee across the table. Kirrel barely glanced at him before looking down. He didn't like to be made fun of, and it sounded like he might be soon. Means we're getting ready to either fight or run away. Which one we pick depends on the situation and what we're risking. But we call it fight or flight.
But you can't fly. You're not airborne. Why would you call it flight?
Kirrel was deeply confused. He was certain, absolutely certain, that that word meant airborne motion. Even if the translator glitched on faces, he was absolutely sure of this word. Doc, I'm not sure how to answer this one. Doc cleared his throat, but whatever he was about to say died as the captain marched into the room, looking, well, not as grim as he'd looked when whatever glass coffin went off, but more grim than usual. Why do you find us, Captain? Kirrel's frills perked up at Sleepy's voice, and he looked around the room, finally spotting the khuman leaning against the wall. Well, they're not willing to all group up after a lot of their military just went silent, so we're looking at a lot of long drawn-out hard battles if we don't get our numbers up. The captain sighed. It almost sounded like a groan. No matter what, we can't afford to get cornered. We need to be the ones cornering them. And the rest of the universe? Well, they're not feeling too charitable at the moment, I reckon. Don't know why half our communications just vanish, but the rest of them are basically, your call is important to us, please hold. So, not great odds. Can we just ghost our way out of the area? Honestly, not sure. The captain sighed, his eyes looking a bit red, as if there were more khuman blood in them than normal. Kirrel didn't understand it, but he didn't like it. It was creepy. But what we have to ask now is, if we leave now, can we get back in? And then right after that, if we leave now, what happens to the farms? The captain looked to the rest of the crew in silence for a moment. Kirrel saw the entire crew turn quiet. Not like a peaceful ship with only Sleepy patrolling it, but like that horrible moment of silence when they first chose to kill. I don't need to remind y'all what special brand of hell those planets are. And I know every last person on this ship, and I know none of y'all are the kind to walk away. But if anyone wants to ghost our way out the system, last chance to speak up. Even the khuman who had first voiced the idea, Tinker, Kirrel thought, was silent. That's about what I expected. But the odds aren't great for us right now, so here's what I reckon we do. On the other side of Tizik's space from here there's a little shipyard. And right next to that little shipyard there's a nice big repair station. Grumpy, that'll be your playground. Are you sure we can take you without trouble, Cap? Sleepy's low voice rumbled through the dining room. As soon as we got it, we'll need to defend it. And we made it this far by not being pinned down in one place. The captain nodded, his teeth bad. This is actually a private repair station. Bit of a mom and pop place, if you will, in a sleepy little part of the galaxy. Dopey, your job is to find a way to make it look like it got shaken down by basically a small town gang of Tiziks. As soon as they find out we're human, we're out of luck. So it has to look like small town criminals that aren't really worth the trouble to pry into. The other thing is, we need to let a bit of signal out of the glass coffin for a bit. Draw all the Tiziks' attention to the other side of their space, make it less likely for it to escalate far if someone does try to pry. Who's watching a register when the next street over's on fire? Dopey nodded, but quietly grumbled, I'm not Dopey. Sure you're not. Beside Kirrel, the khuman who had flopped down leaned forward. The dark skin and calloused hands caught Kirrel's attention. It was Alex. The space under her eyes was dark, and her shoulders slumped slightly.
How did she get so tired so quickly? Or, no, how did I not realize she was this tired?
She seemed exhausted, too much so for it to have been a recent development, and yet she'd been pushing him so hard for so long. Or was that why she was tired?
Seems sound to me. Sleepy?
I'd say it's as good a plan as any y'all get on short notice. I don't love it, though. Feels like it leaves too much to chance. Kirrel's frills flared slightly as he realized he was sitting in on a khuman war council. He was the first non-khuman ever to do so. In all probability, and depending on the department's response, he might also be the last. It was reassuring and terrifying the apparent calmness with which it was discussed. I'd say we go for a different spot. I like the far corner bit. Got any derelict shipyards? The captain considered it for a moment, then opened his holopad and began flipping through. There's one here. Atmosphere might be a problem. Our welding equipment is meant for oxygen atmosphere, and we can't guarantee functional welders on a derelict. I can fix that. Grumpy raised a hand, teeth bad. Won't matter too much, and I agree with Sleepy. It's better to make no waves than small ones, at least until we have more stuff up and running. Kirrel's frills darkened to a deep red. They already had iron shoes and glass coffin. He didn't know what glass coffin was exactly, but it was terrifying and lethal. What more could they possibly need? But then again, he was a cargo jockey, and he knew nothing about war. Maybe he could learn a few things while he was... Kirrel's frills extended fully, darkening to the point the red was almost invisible.
I do not want to learn war. I don't want to, especially not from Deathworld creatures.
How had he even begun to think something like that? Even the khumans didn't go into war lightly. He shouldn't want to know anything about this. Kirrel's thoughts were interrupted by Doc, who whispered that he should be fine to eat another juicy leaf now. Almost warily, Kirrel ate. The slightly sweet taste wiped away some of his worry. That should probably be concerning, but it somehow wasn't. With a glance at Doc, Kirrel carefully picked up another leaf, slowly sliding it closer. Hold on, Squishy. You're going to need to wait a bit on that. The colour in Kirrel's frills this time was orange, a flush of irritation. Doc should have been busy with the war planning. He should have been able to get away with it. Why did the khumans have to be so perceptive? Thank you for listening to Those Days with the Monsters. Read by me, a good bee.